Why did some English verbs lose nasal endings? I saw this ending in many words of Old English origin where a word has an in Old English but then lost in Modern English. Examples: haben, klimben, seen, singan, offrian, etc. I noticed another thing: Old English words that end in and end in en in Middle English. I can't think of other words, but there are so many that behave the same. What's up with the loss of an en? And why the change from en to en? Can anyone please explain this? Edit. While searching for an answer, I found this website, uni.due.de. It has some information, but I don't understand it at all. The effects of the above changes on the morphology of Middle English were very considerable. They led to a loss of distinctiveness among grammatical endings so that the various declensional classes of Old English collapsed, with the dative plural remaining for a while the only case, with a final nasal n, which was distinctive, but even that was reduced in the course of the Middle English period. A direct consequence of this was that the more common declensions were generalized and used productively. The two main ones are the S-type and the nasal type, as seen in the Old English words sta with macronen, stone, snas, stones, and agi, agen, eyes respectively. For a while the nasal declension was productive, as is seen in its addition to the old r plural child, childa, child, e, ren to give the doubly marked plural which has survived to the present day.
These are two different things, though with the same cause, simplification and laziness. Firstly, the infinitive of most regular verbs had a in suffix or ending. For example, in modern German, tanzen, essen, schwimmen. Over time, the infinitives have shortened for ease of use and lost the suffix, so only the root remains, s, tans, schwimm, for example. The article you cite relates to the simplification from a declined language to one without significant declension by firstly removing dative and accusative cases, and secondly standardization away from 3 word genders to just 1.
Old English unstressed irregularly turned into Middle English e. The change of n to en is because of vowel reduction. This was a regular sound change between Old English and Middle English that turned many Old English unstressed vowels into Middle English e. The pronunciation of Middle English unstressed e is often reconstructed as. In later stages of Middle English, and in Modern English, such reduced vowels came to be lost entirely when in word final position, and sometimes when followed by a word final consonant. This same sound change turned the Old English plural noun ending as into the Middle English plural ending es. Middle English final n in unstressed syllables was often, but not always, lost. The reasons are difficult to determine. The loss of n at the end of word final unstressed syllables is more complicated. Because final n survived in some words and some grammatical forms, such as oxen, driven, but not in others, the loss of n in this context does not seem to have been a completed regular sound change, at least not in all dialects of Middle English. I found a paper on JSTOR about the loss of final n, however, its analysis is focused on words other than verbs. Loss of final n in inflectional syllables of Middle English, Samuel Moore, Language, Volume 3, Number 4, December, 1927. Moore says that some Middle English texts, such as Owl and the Nightingale, show almost complete loss of final n in unstressed syllables. Some texts, such as Cotton Nero of 14 Ancren Roll, show loss in certain noun forms and in adjective forms, but not in verb forms, and other texts, such as Chaucer, show loss of n in singular noun forms and in all adjective forms, no loss in the plural noun marker n, and variable loss in verb forms, 232 to 233. Moore makes the point that the distribution of n based on grammatical categories in these texts indicates that we are dealing with more than just a purely phonetic phenomenon. If all that was going on was an optional phonetic loss of n, we'd expect loss of /n/ in each word to be based on the phonetic surroundings in each particular environment, not on the part of speech or grammatical number of the word, 233 to 234. Unfortunately, Moore's paper sets aside the loss of final n in verb forms as a problem requiring further study because this loss seems to have occurred later than the loss of final n in words of other grammatical categories, page 255 to 256. The following source also mentions variation in the use of final n on verbs in Chaucer. Introduction to the History of English, Homorphological Change, Verbs, Hans Plaetzer, University of Vienna. At this point, I don't know enough to tell you why n was eventually completely lost in modern English as an infinitive marker.
Yes,